All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another Cardinals player profile for the 2024 season. Today, we're going to be looking at Willson Contreras. So the first thing we're going to do is kind of break down the narrative surrounding him. Andrew, what do you see as the storylines with Willson Contreras entering the season?
Yeah, well, last year the question was whether or not he can actually be a viable defensive catcher. Like a
Yeah,
month into the season, the team was playing badly, the team was pitching terribly, and for whatever reason, the front office was like, "It's Willson Contreras' fault. He's the reason that we're pitching poorly," and they removed him from catching for like 2 weeks, and it didn't go well. So they put him back, and then he was really, really good in the second half after having a lot of really bad luck and just like overall lack of confidence and just not a good first half. He turned it around, put up one of the better seasons of his career in total, and I just think if he can take that into 2024, he'll be really good. And I don't know if there's questions surrounding his defense anymore. There were rumors at the start of the offseason that they were going to try to move him off there, maybe like a 50-50 split between him and Herrera. But that's fine. He's a quality DH as well. Obviously, we're paying him to catch, but as a bat, he's more than holds his own weight, and has just been really good ever since he put on the Cardinals uniform. Aside from that one stretch where there was just not really his fault.
yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that's a great way to sum things up. One interesting tidbit I was looking at, so the Cardinals removed him from catching duties in early May. So around like May 5th, May 6th, they took him out. He only DH'd for one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, 8 games in a row. Interestingly, the Cardinals went 7-1 in those games, which is pretty funny. But honestly, we had this one meme that went off, the Contreras meme that Andrew made, where it's like, the Cardinals front office is shooting somebody, and they're like, "Oh, why would you do this, Willson Contreras?" Because obviously the problem with the pitching staff was roster construction. It wasn't Willson Contreras' fault. We know that he's not a great defensive catcher. Like, that's a well-known and established fact. The Cardinals weren't shocked when he didn't do that. Also, one more thing: the Cardinals moving him to the outfield temporarily is not that outrageous at all, because that's something the Cubs did like pretty frequently, especially early in his career. Contreras actually played a decent amount of outfield with Chicago. Not a ton, but he did it early in his career. And so it's not the craziest thing ever to say we want to get his bat in the lineup more often. We don't know if we want him to catch every single day. And the Cardinals have a viable option in Ivan Herrera, who I think is worth talking about too. And he'll get his own player profile. But Herrera was really impressive last year, albeit in a limited sample size. But I could see him really pushing Contreras for some playing time this year. But all of that aside, the whole debacle aside, Contreras was really good last year. He was one of the best hitters in the league in the second half. He was great start to finish. We're really happy with what we got from him in year one. That's right up there with his best offensive seasons as a Cub. What do you have to say about that, Andrew?
Yeah, I'm really excited to see him. He lengthens the lineup significantly, and
Yeah.
one thing I think we haven't mentioned because it just kind of hasn't happened yet is that Yadier Molina is supposed to go down to spring training at some point. I don't know when that's going to be,
Hopefully.
but supposedly is supposed to help Contreras work on some defensive stuff as well. So I mean, just having another guy in his ear like that would be huge for his improvement defensively. But yeah, I'm really excited to see what Contreras can do, especially because he has so much protection behind Goldie and Arenado. Honestly,
Yeah.
had a better offensive season than them last year. So we'll see if he
Yeah.
can carry that, and those two can bounce back. We'll profile them later, but yeah, just super interested to see what this lineup looks like with him at like his full potential for the entire year.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are already assuming the Contreras deal is a failure, and those people aren't looking at the numbers. According to B-War, Contreras was our best player last year. He was worth 3.4 WAR. That's a big deal. That's a really good season, even with the defensive questions and even with the lineup questions, right? Because we didn't get Contreras' bat into the lineup as often as we wanted. He struggled with some injuries. Also, a lot of catchers just don't play every day. I loved having Willson Contreras on this team. I think it was a great deal for the Cardinals. And like you said, he was probably our best hitter last year. Definitely lengthens the lineup. Having him there with Goldschmidt and Arenado as an established bat also gives room for younger guys like Walker and Gorman to really flourish. And if this lineup takes the next step this year, Willson Contreras is going to be a huge part of that. If the Cardinals have a top lineup in baseball like we think they can, Willson Contreras is going to be a really big reason they can do that. So, with all that considered, Andrew, Let's get into some best case and worst case for Willson Contreras. What do you think the absolute best case is for his 2024?
Yeah, I think he becomes like a top 20 hitter in the National League, plays solid defense, better defense
Yeah.
with Molina as an advisor, and receives some MVP votes, MVP consideration. I think he's done it before. He's never really gotten that close to it. I don't really think he'll be
Yeah,
like a top 10 vote. He'll get some down ballot consideration, but I think he could be like one of the top hitters, one of the best catchers in the league for
for
sure,
sure.
offensive,
For sure.
probably behind like Adley and like Realmuto and Will Smith and like guys like that who are established like perennial all stars. And yeah, it would be huge to see him take kind of even a next step, like seeing something like because in the second half last year we saw something that we didn't really see with the Cubs, which was he was like an elite hitter for half the season. If he can be that for a whole
Yeah.
season, like that's his ceiling. Is that going to happen? Maybe, probably not, but that would be I think the ceiling that he can reach.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned Will Smith because Contreras was actually a better hitter than him last year, like pretty substantially. Will Smith was a 114 OPS plus guy. Contreras is a 125. He was right up there, tied with Sean Murphy, just a couple of ticks behind Adley Rutschman. I think there's a really good chance that if Willson Contreras gets off to a strong start, he could make an all-star game. He's already done it 3 times in his career. Coming into the season, he's getting the respect he deserves. I think a lot of analysts see that he was good last year. It's just fans that seem to overlook it. I saw him ranked fifth or sixth on a bunch of top 10 catching lists, which I think feels pretty fair, especially considering the one sidedness of the value he brings offensively rather than defensively. But I'm with you. I think a best case scenario for Contreras, like return to all star level. Honestly, it's kind of just doing what he did last year. If he does that again, if he gives you that season again, the Cardinals should be really happy. Maybe a little bit better defensively, but again, you kind of know what you're getting with Contreras, and the Cardinals knew what they were getting when they signed him. He's 30 years old.
I
He's
guess
not going
not.
to change. Yeah, he's not going to change as a ball player. So I think that's kind of what it is. Now, the worst case scenario for Contreras obviously is not nearly as fun. I think in a worst case situation, he takes a step back at the plate. He's 32. I don't think that's officially time to start worrying about getting old. But maybe the cliff comes early and all of a sudden he's like dreadful at the plate and Ivan Herrera turns into an everyday catcher instead of it being a timeshare or even something slanted towards Contreras. What do you think?
Wow, that's kind of that's kind of real like negative in terms of that. I don't think he's put up really a truly bad offensive season yet.
He hasn't.
Closest is 2018 where he had a 94 OPS plus, but that was a long time ago.
Yeah.
And he still made the All-Star team that year, so probably had a good first half. I'm not really sure what
It
happened
was a
there,
really
but
good Cubs team. It was a
yeah.
solid Cubs team. Yeah.
So yeah, I'm not too worried about it. I feel like around league average is probably where his floor sits. I
I
don't
think so
really
too.
think it's going to be anything worse than that. That's his only below average OPS plus season, and it's not particularly close. The next one is 2020, which is 106, but that doesn't. I don't put a lot of stock into 2020 numbers, so I
Yeah.
feel like hovering around 100 OPS plus is around the worst that he's going to end up at, and for a catcher, that's still pretty good.
Yeah, that's still very solid for a catcher. So I think you're right. I'm obviously giving like the worst case scenario, and to be honest, I don't even think it's that realistic. I think we're probably if it's bad, we're going to see something around like 110 OPS plus, and that's really good for a lot of catchers. Let's get into the projections here, though. They're pretty positive about Contreras. So
Mhm.
Zips actually has him taking a step back, and that's what we've been using for a lot of players. They have him hitting 241 with like a 340 on base, 430 slugs. That's like around 790 or 780 OPS, whatever, with like a 112 WRC plus. I think he's going to be better than that. I'm going to take the over on that Zips projection. What do you think, Andrew?
Yeah, I think the WRC plus at around 112 seems a little bit low to me, especially after
I
what he
agree.
did. Like that would be his like he hasn't been around that since like 2020, 2021. I think he dealt with some injuries in 2021 and 2020. Obviously,
Yeah.
it doesn't really count. So um, I feel like the over on that would be what I want as well. I think he's gonna not be like his second half self all of this year, but we'll see flashes of that, and we'll see something kind of in between when he was like really, really bad in the first half, got super unlucky, and like was one of the top hitters in all of baseball in the second half.
Yeah,
Um, he'll be batting like fifth for us most days, so I think he'll be a solid number five hitter. Probably would bat third or fourth on most
that's
teams that
true.
aren't the Cardinals because we just have so much lineup depth. And I think he'll be probably around like 120 WRC plus 125 even. I think he's really good as a hitter. I'm not worried about that at all. And defensively, um, see him about the same. Like it's
Yeah.
fine. You know what you're going to get out of him.
Yeah, exactly. The Willson Contreras experience is what the Cardinals got last year. It's a guy who's really good offensively. He lengthens your lineup, and there are questions about his defense, and that's kind of what you get. Now, you mentioned something about Yachty going down to spring training. That could be interesting. I know Willson Contreras and Yachty have a good relationship, so that could be good. Maybe they work together. Maybe he works on his game calling or something. I know that's something people had question marks about last year, but you kind of know what you're getting with them. I think the Zips projection, like I said before, is low. Some of the other ones are a little more positive. The Bat sees him playing the same number of games as Zips, but hitting a couple more home runs with a little better slugging percentage. And they've got him at a 126 WRC plus. And honestly, I think he's going to give you about what he gave you last year. Like I've said a number of times, Willson Contreras, we know what he is as a ball player. I think he's going to continue to be that guy this year. So, any final thoughts on Contreras?
Yeah, excited to watch him play. That's one of the players that I feel the least worried about going into this season, unless there's an injury or something that we don't know about. You kind of know what you're going to get with him. It's what we got last year. I don't know why the front office was like, "Oh, this is not what we signed
It
up
was so
for."
annoying.
Yeah,
What a frustrating storyline last year, but couldn't agree more. We're super excited to see Contreras play. So thanks for tuning in to another player profile. We'll see you guys next time, and make sure to like and subscribe on the way out.